Hello everybody, today we are going to understand the active voice and passive voice. Understanding the voice, whether it is active or passive, is important. Paying attention to the voice you are using can massively alter the way your message is received. So today in this lesson you will understand the difference between two types of voice, when and why to use each of them, and how to form a passive voice. So let's go over the basics. Active voice is when the subject is performing the action, like in this video.
Been over.
Red knocks the door and the girl throws the ball. So we have a subject, verb and object. So here the subject is performing the action, where in our first sentence the grammatical subject red performs the action described by the verb knocks, and in the second the girl performs the action described by the verb throw. These are the example of active voices. So the passive voice is when the subject is not doing the action, it is receiving the action. Let's consider the previous example. Where a ball is thrown. In this sentence, ball is not throwing itself, the action is being performed on the ball. As you can see, both sentences make sense for their own situations and both are grammatically correct. But you may be wondering when to use active voice or the passive voice. So to know the answer of this question, you should know about the situation where it's best to use active or passive voice. Let's understand with the help of example. Now we are going to look at why it is so appropriate to use active voice. So when you turn up at your home and your mom asks you, what did you do today? So you could say, I took up the test, or you could say, the teacher read to us and we studied maths. And there in all sentences the subject is doing the action or telling a narrative about his day at school. So when it is important to know who is actually performing the action, the use of active voice becomes imperative. Sometimes it is imperative to use active voice because the overuse of passive voice can make your sentence muddled and unclear. As an example of excessive passive voice, recommendations made by a professor that their textbooks be reviewed by the students before the exam which has been scheduled for Friday by him. That was mouthful. As you can tell, the excessive passive voice becomes very distracting. Now let's try by using active voice. The professor recommended the students review their textbooks before the exam which has been scheduled for Friday. The active voice version was much more direct and clear, making it sound more natural. Now there are many situations where passive voice is preferred over active voice. So number one is, if you want to put emphasis on what was done, then who did it? Humidity levels are measured every 4 hours. In this case, it really doesn't matter who did the measuring. Let's consider one more example. This photo was taken in the studio. So here also it doesn't really matter who took the photo. So we leave the actor out of the sentence. Number two, we use passive when we don't want to say who did the action. Maybe because we are trying to avoid the responsibility for something we did, or we don't want to have our mate into the trouble. So if you say the lights were left on all night, you're being tricky, or you lack courage to say that you forgot to do that. Now the other situation where we use passive is when the active subject is obvious. So criminals have been arrested for committing theft. Here we know that the police arrest criminals, so we don't want to add police. Let's take one more example. I was given a prescription, and we all know that only doctors give prescription. So I don't want to add by the doctor. Next in line, the most useful one is when you don't want to blame someone for an action. Suppose your daughter didn't do the homework. It's an example of active sentence and you are direct and clear in that sentence. But if you want to be more polite, a little bit more indirect, you might say on, I know that your homework is not done. So depending on the situation, it is a good idea because we can be harsh with our kids actively. And we have to be passive aggressive. And also at work, when you are working in a team, it's certainly a good idea. Finally, you may use passive voice when you don't know who did it. So you say, we are attacked.
What happened?
We were attacked.
By whom?
I don't know.
So you said we are attacked because you don't know who performed the action. So in the second case, if you say my pen is stolen, clearly you don't have any idea who did it. So all these situations suggest the use of passive voice. Now it's time to understand how to form a passive sentence. So if my active sentence is the girl throws the ball, the passive will be the ball is thrown by the girl. The object of my active sentence becomes the subject of my passive sentence. And in the process of making an object a subject, we actually need to change a few things in our sentence. So are you ready to learn how to do that? Okay, to make the passive form we need to use the passive tense, and there are 6 steps to turn an active sentence into a passive. So you might want to take notepad out so that you can take down the notes as we go. So first step is to identify the subject, the verb and the object of the active sentence. And the second is to move the object to become the new subject of the sentence, which is the ball. Now to check the verb of active sentence, this is really because the passive voice exists across different tenses, so you must check what your active sentence is in to make your passive sentence correct. It is in present simple. The girl throws the ball. So the next step is to conjugate the verb be so that it is in the same tense as the main verb in the active sentence. We need to change our be verb to the present simple, so it becomes is, mr, depending on our new subject. And our new subject is the ball, not the balls. So we can choose is. The ball is. Now step 5 is to add the past participle of the main verb after the be. So looking back at the active sentence, and the main verb is throw here. And it is in present simple. Now can you think of the past participle of the verb throw? Thrown, right. You need to decide what to do with the subject now of your active sentence, which is the girl. So here the girl, which is in the passive voice, you don't need to include the thing that is doing the action. You can completely remove the former subject from your sentence, and that is helpful if you don't know who throws the ball, or you don't want to say who is throwing the ball, or you don't care, maybe it's not important, but you can add it to the end of your sentence with the word by the girl. Now it's time to understand few more important things to form a passive sentence. And the first point is, if the active sentence begins with no one and nobody, the passive sentence will be the negative. So no one turned on the lights, so the passive will be here a negative sentence. The light was not turned on. The second point is, if the verb doesn't have an object, we can transform an active sentence into the passive sentence. For example, in this case, children don't sleep well. The verb sleep doesn't have an object. We cannot make the passive sentence because who would become the subject of our passive sentence to be the sentence. So it is not possible here. The other point to consider is, if there is preposition between the verb and the object, the preposition will remain after the verb. For example, they talked about the issue. So here about will remain after the verb. The issue was talked about. Consider the passive voice of different tenses. Present simple, I do it. Passive voice, it is done. Past simple, I did it. It was done. Future simple, I will do it. It will be done. Present continuous, I'm doing it. It is being done. Past continuous, I was doing it. It was being done. Future continuous, I will be doing it. It will be being done. Present perfect, I have done it. It has been done. Moving on with past perfect. I had done it. It had been done. Future perfect. I will have done it. It will have been done. For the perfect continuous tenses like present perfect, past perfect and the future perfect continuous, we do not have any possessive voice, which is not common in English language. So I have been doing it, I had been doing it, or I will have been doing it. It's better to keep these sentences in the active voice only. Moving on, we'll understand the passive voice of other structures, in structures containing the infinitive. So do will become be done here. Let's take a couple of examples here. Be going to. I'm going to do it. The passive will be, it is going to be done. Have to. I have to do it. It has to be done. Used to. I used to do it. It used to be done. So if you have modal verbs like can or may or any other modal verb, your active sentence like I can do it will become it can be done. Now, in the expressions containing gerunds like doing will become being done. Let's take a couple of examples here also. Avoid. I avoid seeing him. The passive will be he avoids being seen. Don't mind. I don't mind teaching her. So the passive will be she doesn't mind being taught. Remember, in passive voice, the main verb will always be in third form. Now, we can also form a passive sentence with a person and object place. So, somebody pushed me can be changed to I was pushed, or they have invited us will become we have been invited. Now sometimes some sentences have both object and a person in object position. So what do? You can choose either to form a passive sentence. For example, someone handed me a note. So here two objects are me and a note. So say for I choose me to be my subject, I would say turning into pronoun, subject pronoun I was handed a note. And if I choose a note to be my subject, I would say a note was handed to me. I hope there is no confusion left related to active voice and passive voice. That's all for now. Bye bye. Happy studies.